Okay, the big breaking news right now is that the son of President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, has been found guilty on all counts. He faces up to 25 years in prison. I also want to go over some of the other big stories in the news. To help me do that, I have White House correspondent for Today News Africa in Washington, D.C., Simon Ateba. Simon, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Stephen.
So you work directly with the White House. You are in talking with Karine Jean-Pierre on a regular basis. What is the mood right now in Washington, D.C., with Hunter Biden being convicted and facing possibly 25 years in jail?
The President Biden issued a statement today and said he respects the judicial process after his son Hunter Biden was convicted. And I think the mood in Washington, D.C. is to try to establish a difference between President Biden and President Trump and show that, we respect the judgment. We are disappointed by the ruling, but we respect the justice system, and that's the message they're trying to push out there. But of course, that the president can pardon his son. He can do it today. President Biden said in his statement that his son will go through the legal process. So he will go to the Court of Appeal to try to have the conviction reversed.
Okay. Here's my feeling as an outsider, not in Washington, D.C. Joe Biden does not have to do anything today. In fact, it would look really bad. It would look really pitiful and weak if he did. He has, if Trump wins, he has until mid-January. If Trump doesn't win, then he can pardon him at any point. But right now, he would weaken all of the energy against Trump by pardoning his son, and he can allow his son, they're not going to throw him in jail immediately. He can allow that to sit, but ultimately he has many, many months that he could still pardon his family. And I believe if he is unseated as president, it will be one of his final acts. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree with you. He has until January 20th at noon, and the election is on November 5th. So he has November, December, January. He has 2.5 months to pardon his son. He doesn't need to pardon his son now, because if he did that, he will actually benefit those who have said that the lawfare was being used against President Trump and the people on the right, conservatives. When he doesn't pardon his son in Washington, D.C., the best way to really understand Washington, D.C. is to understand the media. Immediately, Hunter Biden was found guilty. You could watch MSNBC, ABC News, CNN, and they were saying that the president himself has allowed the justice system to that the conviction of Hunter Biden proved that the justice is blind in the U.S. And the president is not, attacking the justice system. The president is actually saying that he may not agree with the judgment, but he respects it. By doing that, he was trying to show how different he is from President Trump. But eventually, he can pardon him today if he wants to, but he won't do that because that will look so bad, and that will actually give strength to the argument that the justice system is being used against people, political enemies, and people who disagree with President Biden. And I just want to say this to people who are watching now. So the Democrats have been saying President Biden has allowed the trial of Hunter Biden to go forward. He's the first time the son of a sitting U.S. president has been tried and now convicted. They cite the cases in New York City where Mayor Eric Adams is being investigated. They also cite the Democrat senators, Menendez, who has been charged, and then the congressman in Texas. But all those people are the people that the Washington, D.C. wants to get rid of. The guy in Texas has been critical of President Biden over the southern, the immigration policies. The mayor of New York City, the same problem. He's been, criticizing Biden. He came to Washington, D.C., and the president didn't meet with him. And Menendez, the Democratic Party, is trying to get rid of him. So what you realize is, apart from Hunter Biden, whom he can pardon today if he wants to, the other people who are on trial in the Democratic Party are the people who are actually against the president, who have criticized him in public. So many people have said that it's just a smoke screen to show that the justice system is fair, that justice is blind, that the president's son himself has been tried and has been found guilty. And so President Trump should, he should accept the verdict also, even though everyone could see clearly that a lot of those cases have been old cases brought back decades after, and they just come right before the presidential election in 2024.
Simon, you make a really great point, that they can make themselves look like they're allowing justice, but they're allowing justice to take out the people they don't like. For example, Representative Henry Cuellar, who represents Texas as a Democrat on a border city, he has been highly critical of the border invasion, the amount of illegal immigrants coming in, and the Biden team and other Democrats have said, be quiet, support the cause, get behind the president. And he's continued to speak out on behalf of his voters and his constituents. And so now they want to get rid of him and have somebody in play. That's a very good observation. You brought up the mainstream media. Why do you think the mainstream media is shocked that Trump remains relevant and rising in popularity despite all of the stories they've run against him? It's like they're like, we've said so many bad things about this guy. Why can't the American people just hate him as much as we do? What are your thoughts on their inability to understand this?
No, the reason they are shocked is because they want to be right, even though they are wrong. So in Washington, D.C., what you see the media do is they want to be right about Trump. They want to be right that Trump is going to be a dictator, even though he was in power for 4 years and didn't do that. They want to be right that the country will be less secure under Trump, even though he was in power between 2017 and 2020. And anyone can go back and see how the country was. They also want to be shown that Trump is just a bad person. He's not a good leader. And so that's what they've been feeding people with since 2016, even before that. And now they want the people who watch them to believe the same things. And people don't believe the same things. Trump keeps rising in polls, and they can't understand that. And the reason they don't understand that is because there's a difference between Washington, D.C. and the people. Washington, D.C. has to do with experts, the quote polls, and the experts in Washington, D.C. But people are smart. People are intelligent. They can see things for themselves. They know what they want. At some point, they stop watching the mainstream media and they watch people like you and people like me. And they realize that they can see the truth. They can hear the truth. And they don't need an expert in Washington, D.C. or New York City or even in Atlanta to tell them what they should think. They can see the numbers going up. They can see their pocket. They see the economy not really doing great. And I think they've stopped watching the mainstream media, but the mainstream media is still trying to convince them that, you are wrong. We, the expert in Washington, D.C., we know better. We in Washington, D.C., we know what you should think. This is how you should think. You should see this man as a bad, dangerous person. And the people say, no, we won't buy that. And so they don't really know what to do. CBS fired almost hundreds of people a few months ago. Many of them, people don't watch them anymore. People don't read them anymore. People read me and watch you more than to watch some mainstream media. And that is a problem. And that's why in the next few weeks or few months, the Supreme Court has almost 3 to 4 cases to take up. And even though people are focusing on President Trump and the election, those rulings will actually determine how you and I continue to function, because they also realize, based on what just happened in Europe, they realize that if they are not careful, they are going to lose power. And they need to make sure that the social media and the other new media, that they are restricted and they don't have the type of freedom that people enjoy now. And so we are going to have those rulings in the next couple of weeks or couple of months.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I've noticed on your Twitter that there are many times that you get posts and news stories with higher views than CNN. I have videos that get higher views than CNN. Not every time, but this rise of the small journalists bringing the truth, not having a board or shareholders pressuring you and I get to choose my sponsors. I get to choose the stories. But I mean, you are a modern day success, and I'm sure privately they hate you for how successful you are because you get so many eyeballs in Washington, D.C. You probably saw this on Twitter, Simon, but in the last couple of days, a video has surfaced where Nancy Pelosi is saying that she's accountable, she's responsible for not allowing the National Guard to be there. And now she's going back saying, oh, this is Republicans trying to rewrite history.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this Nancy Pelosi video surfacing that is completely the opposite of what she's been telling us?
It's not just the video. They also spend millions of dollars to blame President Trump. Almost, I guess maybe now the amount is like $20 million since 2020, to say that he alone was responsible for the security failure on the US Capitol on that day. And that video that was just released yesterday, no one had seen it before. And she says in the video that she takes responsibility, and she even says that she should have made sure the National Guard was already stationed at the US Capitol before the protesters began to come. Then she went to MSNBC last night and she blamed Trump. She said he's the only one who is responsible. And she also said that she wants us to move away from, all that. We need to unite the country. She talked about the children. So it's the dishonesty that you see in Washington, D.C., where no one else has been held responsible for what happened on January 6th. And everyone is trying to blame Trump, but no one is trying to get to the truth, to know who the troublemakers were on January 6th. Did we have people who were planted there to cause trouble? Is it not true that the majority of the people who were there on January 6th were peaceful? Who were the few people who decided to cause trouble? No one actually wants to get to the root of the story. And she's been hiding this video. No one has seen it before, where she blamed herself. She said that she takes responsibility. And yesterday she went on MSNBC to say that it's Trump. And the reason they are doing that is because they know that the Supreme Court today or this week or maybe next week is going to rule on the immunity clause. And they know that if the Supreme Court doesn't completely side with President Trump, and then they're going to activate the trial in Washington, D.C. And so they can find him guilty again and tell the people he's been convicted twice. You can elect him. He's dangerous. He tried to overthrow the government. And it shows you the level of dishonesty in Washington, D.C., not just among politicians, but also the media. They had that video. It's not the first time. Why is that video coming out now? That video should have come out during 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but they kept it because that video doesn't tell the story that they want to tell. The story they want to tell is Trump and Trump supporters attacked the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, and they tried to overthrow the government. And they want every single person who was there, even though 99.9% of the people who were there were peaceful, they want all those people to be labeled as domestic terrorists. And that video didn't tell that story, and they didn't want it.
Yeah. It's amazing how once she looks guilty, she thinks we should just move on.
Yeah.
But if a video had come out of, let's say, Trump in the limo saying, "This is all my fault," she would be blasting that 24 hours a day. So just the hypocrisy and the corruption in DC, like you say, is really bad. Speaking of lies and corruptions, I want to get your take on this final question. So the media is a bit panicked that Biden has lost 30% of Black American votes, specifically Black males. They're saying it's because of his disastrous policies. However, Representative James Clyburn says the media is lying and that Blacks will support Biden loyally on the same level. Is Representative Clyburn lying in order to keep Black Americans voting Democrat, or is there truth that they are starting to say, wait a minute, maybe the Democrat policies aren't helping our community like we thought?
Yeah, exactly. He believes in polls when they favor President Biden. When the polls are against him, he said that, it's false, they're lies. And so he said that, was it yesterday or, at the weekend, that he doesn't believe those polls, but Black people are leaving the Democratic Party in droves. We've seen it in New York City. President Trump just held a campaign rally in the Bronx, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? And we saw how many people were in attendance. And I specifically spoke with a lot of Black and brown people there, and they are leaving because they realized that in Baltimore, for instance, where the Democrats have been in power for how many years? 60 years. You have one of the highest, if not the highest, Black poverty rate in the country, and Baltimore is in Maryland. And so they've given power to the Democrats, and it's not improved their life, their economy, the family, anything. And they realize that, maybe we need to try someone else. We need to try Trump, and they are gravitating towards Trump. And Washington doesn't want to accept that. But I believe that they're going to be shocked if the people I speak with, if they come true on November 5th, Trump is going to win a big Black vote. And people will be shocked. And it won't be because they don't think, it will be because they realize that they need to try something new. And also because they realize that the economy was better when Trump was there. The immigration was better when, a few years ago. No one is against immigrants. I'm an immigrant, and I've not spoken to anyone who is against immigrants. I think what people don't want is just people who walk across the border and millions and millions and millions of people. And so no one will accept that in any country. You want people to go through the process, to wait for years and apply for immigration and then be granted and be proud of, becoming American. You don't want someone to just walk across the border and then when they're exhausted, they just walk back. It doesn't make sense. And so Black people see all those things and they realize that, maybe we can't continue like this. And many of them want to vote for Trump.
Okay. Interesting. I know you got to get back in there and fight with Karine Jean-Pierre, keep her honest. Thank you so much for everything that you do. I'm going to put a direct link to your Twitter X account down below so that people can enjoy following you as much as I do. I know that you work hard. You are putting in a lot of hours to bring the truth to the American people, and I appreciate that. I wanted to highlight that. And thank you for covering the Hunter Biden story and President Biden and President Trump. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too, Stephen. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
Thanks.